Hello everyone, it's Anna here, your macrame artist and teacher. In today's video, despite the fact that I finally have some proper Christmas decorations in the background, I'm not doing anything Christmassy. Today's tutorial is for a larger macrame wall hanging, and my hope is to show you that even though you may be just a beginner and you only know a few of the basic knots, you're not really that skilled yet, you can make a really big and beautiful piece. So let's jump into it. The list of supplies, as always. I've got two wooden dowels. Both are the same length, 80 centimeters. One will be for the top of the wall hanging and the other one for the bottom. And for my macrame cords, I'm actually planning to use 3 different colors. All of the cords are 5 millimeters single twist, and the 2 basic ones are colors that Bobigny have recently released, and I'm just in love. This one is called Wine Red, and then this one is called Mauve. Now, I keep going back and forth on whether these two actually go together, and I'm not decided. I will just go ahead with it, and you guys can tell me in the comments what you think once you see the final piece. And then the third color, which will be just the simple natural, will be sort of like a complementary color to the 2 others. I'm going to make some tassels out of this one, and even though I'm showing you this on the big spool, I will actually be using a lot of my scrap cords of this for that, because I will only need very short lengths, and those are perfect for that. So that was the short list of supplies for my tools. My clothing rack for sure with some S-hooks, possibly a glue gun, and definitely a brush for those tassels. And with that, I can jump into it. I will go ahead, cut all of my cords, the base ones, with the 2 colors, and then put them on my dowel using the regular lark's head knot, but just in a slightly different way to make it easier to put all of the cords on, because they will be super long. And then I will get back to you and show you the pattern.
To peace, you start to wonder who's playing. Play me, play who? Lucky I'm stronger than ever. Got the arrangement to leave. You can go on and collect some memories of me. Abandoning is a hard word to use, but it's true. So challenging life with you, but I'm all through. Gone away and gone for good. I did everything I could, but you can't remember me. Gone away and gone for good. I did everything I should, but you can't remember me. Every little thing that was said, it doesn't matter now when I leave, and our song is playing on. Every little thing that was said, it doesn't matter now when I leave, and our song is playing on.
So here we are with all of the cords up. There is 21 cords of each color. Hopefully in the previous clip you saw how I was doing that little trick of making the lark's head knot in my hand and only then putting the cord on the dowel. What I also did is make sure this right here is the middle of the dowel, so 40 centimeters. And I also checked on a few of the cords here and there just to make sure that when I pull the cord, the ends are actually the same, and majority of them were, or there were like slight differences, maybe like this. So I think that we are good with that as well. And that means I can start the pattern. And like I was saying in the beginning, this pattern is super easy because it is essentially just square knots, and that's it. So all of these cords are going to make square knots. I'll make one full row of square knots in the beginning, but later in random spots, I will leave out a space for where in the rest of the row there is a square knot. And you will see that as I go through it. In those spaces, that's where I'm later going to be putting in the tassels. But other than that, it really is going to be just square knots all the way down. So I'll start making those, and once I get to a spot where either I run out of cords or I will feel like it is long enough, I will get back to you.
Just like fire, no denying. I know we won't be late. Sky may be gray, there might be rain. I have to say, I know I do lean on faith. Darling, you know, wait for me and I'll come home. It's not a simulation.
And here I am, many square knots later. I have done 45 rows. You can almost see the end right here. And you can see a little bit the gaps that I've made. So there is 1, 2, and 3 on the lighter side, and 1 and 2 on the darker side, and then there's 1 right here in the middle. I didn't calculate the rows in which I was making those gaps. I just sort of went and eyeballed what would look good. I definitely made it not symmetrical, so none of the gaps are placed in the same columns as some of the ones above. So just kind of scattering it all over the piece. And so now I am going to start adding tassels into those gaps. So for those, I've got my natural cords. I think I'll try to do 5 for one of the tassels and see if that's enough, or if I need to add more. As you can see, they're pretty short. And the first thing I'm gonna do is take my brush and brush those out in my hand, and only then I'll add them to the piece, because I want the entire tassel to be brushed out, which would be impossible to do if we attach them first. So let me take you to the close-up so you can see what I'm doing. So just brushing it out like this, and this is why it's good to use those scrap cords, because usually the scrap cords are already a little bit more untwisted, so that makes them a lot easier to brush out. So kind of like this, making sure you're holding it tight here so that all the cords are staying in the same bunch and they're not loosening up or that sort of thing. So one side like this, then hold it on the brushed out side and do the other one. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. It doesn't have to be completely perfect. You just want this middle part to be brushed out and not have any twists in it. And so what I'm going to do now, it doesn't matter in which of the gaps you start, so I'll just take this one in the middle here. So I'm going to take one end of the tassel and twist it just a little bit so that it's easier to work with, because what I need to do is pull it through one of these gaps and pull all of the cords through. And of course you want to be careful to not damage any of the cords or the knots, so carefully pulling all of that in there. So once that's in there, we will take the other end and do the same thing just on this gap right here. So the other one. Try to kind of squeeze that upwards so you do have this space right underneath, because that's where we then need to pull both of the ends back towards us. And it should look something like this. We can then take our brush again and very, very carefully, so that we don't get the brush caught on this part, we can again brush out the rest of the tassel. And it should look something like this when you are done. I've realized that the 5 cords might be too many. I think 4 would be okay, just because the gaps are a little bit smaller and it was a little bit difficult to just push everything through it. So if you want to make that part easier, do 4 cords only instead of the 5. I'll continue with the 5 now since I already have the first one on. And then, so I'll just add the other, 5 tassels in. And then I'm going to use my gigantic super sharp scissors to make a very clean cut at the end of each of the tassels. All the pretty fluffy tassels are in, which means we've come to our last step, and that is adding the second dowel at the bottom. Now, if you don't want to bother with the second dowel, I think it's also okay to just leave the fringe as is. Maybe just cut it at the same length or something, or brush it out a little bit more at the ends to kind of match the tassels, and I think that would look good too. But for those of you that do want to add the dowel, let me show you how I'm going to do that. So the way that I'm going to add this dowel is with double half hitch knots from all these cords, and essentially we're pretending that the dowel is our travel cord. So first I'll make sure that this end is more or less the same as the one up there, so maybe like this, and then I'm going to add the first cord. So make the first really easy loop over the dowel, and then the second one again over the dowel, and then out through the middle here. And you don't have to worry too much about how that knot looks like, just tighten it a little bit and that's good. And now we're going to move on to the very end on the other side. And on here, we will do the same thing with this cord right here. So the first loop, that goes over the dowel like that. And then the second one, again, over that dowel and out through this middle. And we tighten. Again, not worrying too much about it, and you will see when I let go, the dowel kind of flops down a little bit, but that's fine. And so what I'm going to do next is start adding other double half hitch knots kind of more randomly, like somewhere in these sections, and then tightening the dowel all the way to where the square knots end. And that's really easy to do. I mean, you just need to kind of pull on that double half hitch knot and it pulls tighter. And then one by one, I'll add all of the cords that are hanging down here.
I'm thinking back on all those times when I felt closed off from all that I could become. Eager but too scared to climb. Wanted to please my friends, but it felt like the end of myself.
second dowel is attached. Now what you have to do here is squeeze the cords pretty tight on the dowel. Because you're making the double half hitch knots, they take up a lot more space than the lark's head knot that we did at the top. But you still want to fit everything in the same space. So you have to squeeze them tight. And also, the kind of cheating that I'm doing is that I'm simply just leaving some of the cords out. So usually like the middle ones in the knot that are the closest to the dowel, I'll leave out one of them and just not do the knot with that cord at all and just, leave it hanging. And I'll do that like every couple knots when I can see that it's like I'm running out of space there. So that's how I've attached it. And now I have a dilemma. So my original idea was that at this point, I would cut all of the cords super short and I would use my hot glue gun and just attach them to the back of the dowel. I think that would give it like a very nice clean look. But now I have thought about possibly brushing them out and like cutting it off like here and making that brushed out fringe. But I have no idea if I'm going to like that, but it's something I've never done before, so it's also, kind of interesting for me, and I'm curious if that would look good. The problem is that I can just brush them out, see if I like it, but then if I don't, and I'll want to go back to the first option, it will be a lot more difficult to do that because the brushed out cords will be just more difficult to like glue all of it to the back of the work. But I think I'm just going to test it maybe on just like a few of the cords or like a section somewhere and see if I'm liking that look. And then if I do, I'll just do it on the entire thing. If I don't, I'll go back to my original plan with the hot glue gun. I brushed out the entire thing and I'm definitely a big fan, but I also feel like now I have the most difficult part of the entire project ahead of me, and it's actually got nothing to do with macrame. Because it looks unfinished. So I think that I either have to cut a straight line, which that sounds like such an easy task, but it can go also wrong so easily. So I can either do that or figure out a way, just cut little pieces at different lengths. But again, I just don't know if that would actually look good. I kind of like how it's looking now that you have these little, here it's a little bit shorter and here it's a little bit shorter, but I don't know if I can make that artificially. This is looking like that because the cords that I was brushing out were at a different lengths originally. So I think I'll try to go with that straight line, cutting it as long as possible so that I'm giving myself a chance to redo it at a slightly shorter length if it doesn't work out. And it's moments like this when I seriously consider buying that laser level for my macrame, the one that people use when they're drilling shelves on the wall or putting up wallpaper or whatever. It shines that line, that straight leveled line onto your wall, and it would just be so easy, I think, to then just cut across that line. But I don't have that, so I'll just have to go with my measuring tape and making sure that I'm keeping the same length throughout the entire thing. And once I do that, I am done. it is straight. I've managed that in the end. It wasn't all that difficult, and I just love the entire piece. I'm just really glad that after such a long time I got to make something big and beautiful again. So I've really enjoyed that. I hope you guys liked watching another kind of big piece tutorial, and I definitely look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.